One of the main reasons why Erdogan's progressive base has turned against him is his economic mismanagement and mishandling of the coronavirus pandemic. Erdogan, who came to power in 2002 with a promise of economic growth and stability, has presided over a decade of decline and crisis. His policies have led to high inflation, currency depreciation, rising unemployment, widening budget deficits, and growing external debt. His interference in monetary policy and his resistance to raising interest rates have eroded investor confidence and triggered capital flight. His ambitious infrastructure projects have been marred by corruption and environmental damage. His reliance on foreign borrowing and domestic credit expansion has made the economy vulnerable to external shocks and domestic imbalances. The coronavirus pandemic has only exacerbated these problems. Turkey has been hit hard by the health and economic consequences of the virus, with over 7 million cases and over 60,000 deaths as of May 2023. The government's response to the pandemic has been widely criticized as inadequate, inconsistent, and opaque. Despite claiming to follow a science-based approach, Erdogan has often disregarded the advice of experts and imposed arbitrary and ineffective measures. He has also downplayed the severity of the situation and manipulated the official statistics to hide the true extent of the outbreak. He has failed to provide sufficient financial support to businesses and households affected by the lockdowns and restrictions. He has also politicized the pandemic by blaming foreign powers, opposition parties, and social media for spreading misinformation and undermining his efforts. Erdogan's economic policies and handling of the coronavirus pandemic have eroded his support among the middle class and the youth, who were once his loyal followers. The middle class, which benefited from Erdogan's early reforms and growth, has seen its living standards deteriorate and its aspirations frustrated. The youth, which constitutes a large and growing segment of the population, has faced limited opportunities for education, employment, and social mobility. Both groups have become disillusioned with Erdogan's authoritarianism, nepotism, and intolerance. They have also become more aware of the alternative visions offered by the opposition parties, which have formed a broad coalition to challenge Erdogan's rule. The opposition has capitalized on Erdogan's failures and weaknesses by presenting a more inclusive, democratic, and progressive agenda for Turkey's future. One of the main reasons why Erdogan's progressive base has turned against him is his authoritarian tendencies and crackdown on dissent. Since he came to power in 2002, Erdogan has gradually eroded the democratic institutions and freedoms that Turkey had achieved after decades of military coups and political turmoil. He has also alienated his former allies in the West and cozied up to Russia, undermining Turkey's role as a NATO member and a bridge between Europe and Asia. Erdogan's authoritarianism became more evident after a failed coup attempt in 2016, which he blamed on a US-based cleric named Fethullah Gulen and his followers. Erdogan used the coup as a pretext to purge tens of thousands of people from the military, judiciary, academia, media, civil society, and opposition parties, accusing them of being part of a terrorist organization. He also declared a state of emergency that gave him sweeping powers to rule by decree and bypass parliament. He then held a controversial referendum in 2017 that changed the constitution and granted him even more authority as an executive president. Erdogan's crackdown has not spared his former progressive allies, who had supported him in his early years for his economic reforms, social welfare programs, and efforts to resolve the Kurdish conflict. Many of these allies were liberals, secularists, Kurds, minorities, and women who hoped that Erdogan would lead Turkey towards a more pluralistic and democratic society. However, they soon realized that Erdogan had a different agenda, to consolidate his power and impose his conservative and nationalist vision on the country. One of the most prominent examples of Erdogan's betrayal of his progressive base is his treatment of the Kurdish politicians and activists who had backed him in the peace process with the Kurdistan Workers' Party, PKK, a militant group that has waged a decades-long insurgency against the Turkish state. In 2015, Erdogan abruptly ended the peace talks and resumed the military operations against the PKK, accusing them of collaborating with the coup plotters. He also cracked down on the pro-Kurdish People's Democratic Party, HDP, which had emerged as the third largest party in parliament and a potential coalition partner for Erdogan. He arrested dozens of HDP lawmakers, mayors, and members on terrorism charges, banned their rallies and media outlets, and replaced their elected officials with government-appointed trustees. Erdogan's authoritarianism and crackdown on dissent have not only alienated his former progressive allies, but also mobilized a united opposition under Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, the leader of the main secularist Republican People's Party, CHP. Kılıçdaroğlu has formed an alliance with other opposition parties, including nationalists, Islamists, and Kurds, to challenge Erdogan in the upcoming election. He has promised to restore democracy, human rights, and rule of law in Turkey, as well as to improve relations with the West and NATO. He has also vowed to end the state of emergency, release political prisoners, and lift the restrictions on media and civil society. The election on Sunday will determine whether Erdogan can continue his authoritarian rule or whether Turkey can return to its democratic path. The stakes are high for Turkey and its people, as well as for its neighbors and allies. The outcome will also have implications for regional stability, security, and cooperation in a volatile part of the world.